Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all hearing me loud and clear. Welcome to Interactive Futures. My name is Dr. Jo Twist. I'm the CEO of UK Interactive Entertainment, and I'm here to do the opening talk for today. I hope you've had a really good time so far and it's been full of information and fantastic panel sessions and talks. And I hope I don't let you down. We are Ukie. We are the trade body that represents the games industry across the UK, and our mission is one simple mission, and that is to make the UK the best place in the world to make, sell, and play games. We represent over 500 member companies, but also we're the voice of the whole sector across the country. But our members consist of publishers, the people who sell games, the people who make games, platforms, esports companies, VR, AR. We also represent more around the ecosystem. So those PR firms or other service companies and tech companies as part of the really important games ecosystem. We also have a really, really brilliant academic student membership network with over 30 academic institutions and over 3,500 student members from all across the UK. What we do is we try and make sure that we are supporting the industry and promoting the industry and really making sure that we're creating a really healthy environment for you to have a great career and for you to employ people and to run successful businesses and continue to make us the best place in the world for games. And we do that through a number of bits of work, through what we call lobbying, public policy work. So we stop silly things happening and we try and help good things happen, like video games tax relief and getting computer science back onto the school curriculum, for example. We also have an extensive international and national trade and investment program because it's really important that we're supporting, especially young businesses with information, but also information support around how to run businesses, but also introducing them to people who can make their businesses scale. And we have a lot of activity in education, right from school age to, well, when you retire, apparently. And I'm going to be focusing quite a lot in this talk on some of the education work that we've been doing over the last 12 months. We used to have events. Of course, we all still have events. They're just like this. And I have my slippers on and my blanket on my knees. And when we do go back to physical events, this is how I shall be, because I like wearing my blanket. And importantly, we do a lot of work to try and really explain and celebrate games as part of culture. Games are cultural products. Games are made by people, humans with feelings, not computers. We use computers to make games. I think you heard earlier on in the week from some people about the role of Leamington in the games industry, but here's some just top line stats, which I'm sure you've seen before, that really explains the strength and the scale and the size of the games industry across the UK. We support around 50,000 full-time equivalent jobs up and down the country. And you've heard, I'm sure, in sessions around all kinds of different roles that we need in the games industry, not just people who make games or who can program or who know maths, but people who are artists, who have business skills, PR, lawyers, accountants, all of those jobs. But most of the companies in the UK are small and medium enterprises. They're very small companies. We do have very large companies as well, but most of them are small companies, so they need that support as well. The really good news is that the games industry is all around the UK, and you may have heard the government talk about a levelling up agenda, a term that I think is a little bit gamey, and we have around 23 UK town and cities across the UK that have really strong games clusters, including Silicon Spa. And we deliver a lot to the economy, and that's important, particularly during the last 12 months. We have really tried to focus on how we can play a role in economic recovery post-pandemic. And what I want to talk about today in the minutes I have is just about the last 12 months a little bit. And really the stuff that we've been doing to try and educate, to try and support education, but to try and maintain our strength and resilience as an industry. Games have been so important over the last 12 months. They are always important for people, but games have been incredibly important over the last 12 months during the pandemic in all sorts of ways that I will talk about. But essentially, what I really believe about games, and it's when you make games, but also when you're playing games, Games really promote and help you hone those skills that really are critical for what we call the fourth industrial revolution, or as some might call it, the metaverse. But it's that next sort of revolution, the industrial revolution that we're moving into, away from the information age and more into a different kind of being. And that is a really important part of our economy. And it's really important when we're thinking about jobs of the future and automation and how things like that are affecting careers, options and opportunities for the future generations. I really like this quote that I found earlier on this month in The Guardian. And I find it really interesting that those of us who play games, who are in the games industry, know this, okay? We know how important games are culturally and how important games are in people's lives. But I think over the last 12 months, because many more new audiences have come to games because of lockdown, I think there's this realization that games are here to stay. This quote is fantastic. It's difficult not to look at the graphics of the latest video games like The Witcher, Call of Duty, or Control, and see some of the most compelling imagery of our age. As much as it may disturb many people, if music was the most important form of youth culture in the 20th century, video games seem slated to be the most important in the 21st. I truly believe that, and I know many people who work at Ukie and who are in the games industry. This is what drives us. We know that we are one of the most important communications and cultural media in 21st century. So it's really important that we continue to show people the opportunities in careers and jobs to help drive that forward. We also know that games are a really important and critical part of what we call the ecosystem of technology and creative industries. We sit at that apex, which is a very, very brilliant apex to be sitting at, which combines technology and innovation with creativity and storytelling. And I think that is absolutely quintessentially what the future skill sets that we need are about. And if we look at where we sit within the whole value of the creative industries in the UK, obviously this was for 2019, 2020 was a very strange year, but you can see within the creative industries story where we sit. We're the biggest contributor to the economy in terms of GVA, alongside other software and creative technology services, but bigger than advertising, than publishing, than film and television and music. And that's really important. And MPs and political decision makers really understand this. And they understand as well that as soon as you release a game, it becomes an export because it's available to the entire world if you want it to be. So we are a really, really big driver of the creative industries. And indeed, the creative industries is one of the fastest growing sectors in the UK. And in terms of value to the economy, the creative industries as a whole generate £13.2 million every hour. In 2019, that was. Obviously, 2020 has been a different story. The games industry has been remarkably resilient throughout the pandemic. We did a lot of research with members reporting back into government to understand what support they might need at the beginning of the pandemic. And we released a report called Playing On, which showed that even at the worst of lockdown, the industry was operating at sometimes 100%, sometimes more productive, but on average about 80 to 90% in productivity. And that's very different to how we saw a lot of our sister creative industries like film and TV, who had to grind to a halt because they rely on being physically located to shoot a film or to do a TV program. Of course, that's changed now, thankfully, and they're back on their feet. But the industry, the games industry, was remarkably resilient, and we pivoted very, very successfully with some teething issues very quickly. And indeed, it's been a record year for the industry so far. 24% of companies we talked to during last year were still hiring. We are always looking for those skill sets and always looking for people to be working in our industry. And only 18% reported having to use some of the economic measures like the furlough scheme during lockdown. And we've also seen that game worlds, and we know this, we've known this for a long time, that game worlds are becoming virtual stages for performances. But there's now more and more attention again to what role that game worlds play in terms of performances across other industries because of the pandemic. And again, some people call this the beginning of the metaverse. I just call this inevitable. And indeed, I'm looking forward to the Short Night Film Festival in Party Royale. Sorry, the date's cut off there, but it's on Saturday. I will definitely be tuning in. And I find this really fascinating as a potential for other sectors who, for the long term, will be thinking about how they pivot digitally and how they make performances available in different ways to different audiences. And of course, many of our technologies and our innovations that we use to make our games bleed into other sectors. And that's from the early days of motion capture till the full range of virtual production technologies and machine learning and artificial intelligence and so on. But, as we all know the story about the Mandalorian and using Unreal Engine, this is all part of this virtual production emerging technologies in the UK, which has been very successfully used in Hollywood. And because of lockdown and because of the pandemic, many more sectors like advertising, TV and film are looking at how to really reskill their workforce into virtual production technologies. And if you think about the potential of this and these technologies for other sectors like the cultural sector, the heritage sector, which have really struggled during lockdown, I think there's tremendous opportunity and there's now real appetite for our skill sets and our technologies and our innovations and our creativity to support other industries. It might not be the same as going to a museum or enjoying things in the way we used to, but it's pretty good. I just put that in because I like it. So at Ukie, during the last 12 months, obviously we've been there to support businesses in this very difficult time. I think a lot of businesses, a lot of people have really had to support their workforce with mental health, trying to support people to continue to be creative while being apart. But we also really focused this year over the last 12 months on supporting parents and carers and giving information and direction to people. We accelerated the launch of Ukipedia, which is an amazing wiki of all the industry information and stats and data that you could ever wish for. And if it's not there, then it's a wiki, so add it. And that you can Google that and find that resource. We also updated askaboutgames.com, which is the home now of the new family gaming database, which is a fantastic repository that you can search if you want to find a game that you want to play with your grandparents, or you want to find a game that helps you feel calm. You can put in these filters and find those games. And Andy Robertson has done a tremendous job with that database, really guiding people to the right games to play. And Ask About Games, of course, also holds all the information about how to set limits, how to talk to your children perhaps about the games that they're playing. And of course, our education program, which I'll talk a little bit more about, Digital Schoolhouse, released new content for computing at home and to support homeschooling and giving out resources that really helped people just get on that computing journey from home. And we focused a lot around two major campaigns this year. In January 2020, we launched with Rio Ferdinand, Get Smart About Play. And that was really to try and, again, educate parents and carers about the family settings and about how to use the controls and the settings in order to make sure that people are playing in a balanced way, that you're understanding the kinds of content that's appropriate, that you're talking to your children about the kinds of games they want to play, and that you're really making sure that you're playing with confidence. And we relaunched that, or we rebooted it for the next gen console releases. Of course, let's not forget 2020 was next gen console time. And we relaunched that with Ian Wright called Get Set Go, which was really focused at the new consoles and making sure that parents and carers, before they gifted it or opened it in their family, that they were setting the parental controls and family controls before they did that. We also wanted to support the industry in the UK and globally really cares about people. We really love what we do and we want to give back, particularly when we're doing well compared to other sectors. So we launched a campaign. It was a very collaborative effort and 100,000 free games were given and donated from dozens of games companies for NHS workers called Games for Carers. And this was incredible. And the feedback we got from some people, some NHS workers, was really, really emotional. Parents who had to separate from their children because they were working on the front line, had to isolate from them, but were able to pick up a game by getting it for free and play with their children after a very, very tough shift. So this was an incredibly important campaign. I really want to thank everyone who was involved in that. We also focused on the social connection and the importance that games can play, particularly when we are all isolated at the moment, particularly if you're on your own. So we took part in the Play and Talk campaign with CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably, and we encouraged people just to take an hour or so just to play a game with someone, with a friend, with a colleague, with a family member, just to talk and play. And that is incredibly important. Let's not forget the role that games play in that. I mentioned that games have had a record-breaking year in 2020. You know, we say this with mixed feelings because of the year that everyone has had and the extraordinary difficulties people have faced personally and professionally. But the Entertainment Retail Association, they always do these figures just on games software, digital and physical. They don't include hardware sales in these figures, but they do this across games and music and film, etc. And video game software just had its first 4 billion consumer spend year in 2020. No surprise there. Everyone's consumption of entertainment over the last 12 months has increased, whether that be book reading, whether that be listening to music, anything to get us through these very difficult times. We do a more complete valuation on consumer spend, which will be coming out very soon. And that will include things like merchandise. It will include hardware sales and peripherals as well. But I think more importantly, I mentioned the role that games have played during lockdown. I think more importantly, this is about the real understanding that's getting more sophisticated about the positive place of games in people's lives. Some research came out during last year that said, it came out in September, that showed that players in the UK in particular, game players, were far more likely to report that games made them feel happier, less anxious, and less lonely than anywhere else in Europe during 2020. We also saw some fantastic research. This is one very close to my heart, as Animal Crossing has been my daily routine. This bit of research came out from the Oxford Internet Institute in November of last year that looked at telemetry data in gameplay in two games, Animal Crossing and in Plants vs. Zombies. And that's important actually because it looked at real data rather than self-reported data from players, but it showed a positive correlation between mental well-being and playing games. We also were very pleased to partner with the National Literacy Trust on this bit of research last year that came out last year as well, that showed that 2 in 5 video game players were motivated to read more and to really explore literacy in so many different ways because they played games. So whether that be reading reviews or writing reviews, writing blog posts, or reading books about games or fan fiction. So this is incredibly encouraging, and it particularly showed this research that it was particularly high in terms of reluctant readers. So games played a really important role in typically reluctant readers in encouraging them to read more and to write more. We also just brought together all our education initiatives. So we created, and this is Laura in the team, created this fantastic branding at the top left, because we do a lot in education and supporting talent, no matter what stage you're at, no matter what age you are, whether that be through Ask About Games, Digital Schoolhouse, the computing program that we run, which is training the teachers to really inspire the next generation into creative computing, or the student membership. We also partner with Into Games, fantastic organization, to run the Video Game Ambassador School Speaker Scheme. And so we rebranded all of this and just put it under one umbrella just to make it more simple for people. And the Digital Schoolhouse team did a tremendous job. if you want to find out more, I've got some links at the end of this about Digital Schoolhouse, but it's been running since 2014. And we've reached thousands of teachers and pupils through the program. And a really important part of the program is the esports tournament, which sadly this year had a bumpy ride because of lockdown, but it will be back. And we did do the live final online. But the esports nationwide schools tournament is incredibly successful accidentally, and it was growing year on year. And we call it an immersive careers experience because schools all over the country compete across several months, and the grand final is usually during London Games Festival in April. And it's a fantastic tournament because we open up other job roles and we matchmake pupils with industry professionals in those roles, such as social media manager, team management, audio mixing. So it really shows people the breadth of different skills and jobs available, not just in esports, but in games as a whole. And the Digital Schoolhouse team also really pivoted very successfully to support home educators. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that they did during the last 12 months, including live streaming their computing workshops. They did a lot of computing activities using household objects. So that's learning about computational thinking and programming concepts, just using everyday household objects with no technology required. Because I think one of the things that we have all realized during the lockdown is how much of a digital divide there still exists across the country, with people not having access to equipment. And we knew this in schools anyway, working with schools, or not having access to broadband. And they also worked on an international partnership and on the MOBO Game Jam, which is fantastic game jam. It's still open. You can still submit a game or game idea before this Sunday. And we are working towards Games Careers Week at the end of March, which is a great event happening, a new event to help with supporting information on games careers. Again, working with Intergames. This is a snapshot. This is my favorite project actually of the year, when we did the final of the Digital Schoolhouse tournament in November. We always have a panel session during the final, and it's a careers panel session. So we just have a number of brilliant experts from the industry, all kinds of different jobs, not necessarily related to esports. And this year, after I was obsessed with Gary Whitta's talk show in Animal Crossing, and also watching Now Play This earlier on in the year in Animal Crossing, I said, can we do the panel in Animal Crossing, please? So I helped out, and I personally donated that wallpaper, which was animated, and a couple of cameras, but the team did an amazing job in pulling this together, and it was really enjoyable to watch. And of course, the Ukie student membership has still been running and still been offering opportunities such as work placements and information, game jams, internships, and conferences and newsletters. And Leon on the team does an incredible job, along with everything else he does, in running that student program. And if you want some more information on it, I'm happy to provide more. We usually do 2 student conferences a year, and the first one happened digitally in April last year, and the next one is happening during Games Careers Week, as I mentioned earlier. And the great thing that we've been doing is also having networking events in GatherTown. If you haven't checked out GatherTown, please do. It's really fun, and it really replicates that hanging out and bumping into people feeling that we used to have in other events. Also this year, we've really been pushing Raise the Game. Now this is a equality, diversity and inclusion pledge, an industry pledge that we're encouraging all games companies to sign up to. We released a census, which was the first of its kind in 2020 in February. All of this seems like a very long time ago, and it wasn't really. And at the same time, that census told us about how diverse we were and as an industry, or how diverse we weren't as an industry. And we launched a Raise the Game pledge with the aim to sign up 200 games businesses by the end of this year. which would mean reaching over 50% of the games workforce. And the pledge is very simple, around 3 pillars of inclusion. One around improving recruitment practices, the second around creating inclusive and supportive workplace culture, and the third around how we actually represent diversity and inclusivity in the characters, the stories, the games themselves on screen. And there's been a lot of activity through the year around EDI in general, but around the Raise the Game pledge. So we have over 100 companies signed up so far. It doesn't matter what stage you are at in your EDI journey. Please do go to the Raise the Game website to find out more if you want to get involved. It is all about sharing experiences and best practice and learning from others who are on the same journey as you. As part of that, we also relaunched our video game ambassadors scheme. This is our school speakers scheme. And so far we've got over 300 VGAs signed up, and these people are all available to speak virtually to your schools or colleges or universities, and to really tell you about the wonderful careers that they have, no matter what job they're in the games industry. And 40% of them, I'm pleased to say, are women, and we are focusing on really diversifying that network over the next 12 to 24 months. And I would encourage you to go to the VGA website and find out more if you're interested in signing up or interested in getting a school speaker. We also have a new group within Ukie, which is trying to bring together industry and educators for, again, sharing opportunities, sharing information, guidance, just to improve the quality of education in the UK for all the opportunities that we're going to provide as an industry. And we're about to launch a new campaign next week, which hopefully is going to not only really focus on our sustainability agenda, our green agenda as an industry, but also to try and help to close that digital divide. If you are interested in what that campaign is, look out for it and you can email me. So there are lots of opportunities to get involved. We're doing a whole series of what we call 1-minute mentor, 60-second videos to explain your role. As I mentioned, the Video Game Ambassadors Network is looking for more speakers to come and be part of that network. And of course, the next student conference is on the 26th of March, and there will be another student game jam as well as part of what we do over the next couple of months. So really, the industry and games are here for you. Games are here for humans to connect, for humans to really, I suppose, be more resilient in themselves. Really, I think for me, games are, it's so important in terms of the skill sets that we're going to need, you know, whether that be making games or playing games. Games are giant simulations of life. They teach you skills that are fundamental to how we're going to be living in the next generation in the 4th Industrial Revolution. Play is still so fundamental to humans and to learning. But I really do think that also there are embedded really complex skills that games and games makers have. Systems thinking is something that I am a massive fan of. Games really encourage players and people to think about relationships, not isolated events when you're playing games. And in our complex global world, which is becoming really even more complex, systems thinking is critical for everyone. Games encourage players to explore thoroughly before moving on too fast, to think laterally and not just linearly, and to use such exploration and lateral thinking to reconceive one's goals from time to time. Sounds like just what many a modern high-tech global workplace wants, and I could not agree more. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you did hear me. Who knows, I can't see anyone. Here are some links, and I'm really happy to be contacted, and we may or may not have time for questions. I will stop sharing my screen. And that's it.